Hello and welcome. It is episode number 8 of the hilarious Humanitarians podcast. I'm Frances Echevarria. Deanna Silverman, hi.
Hello.
Are you feeling in the holiday spirit?
Can you tell?
I do love it. Before we jump into this episode on shame, why don't you go ahead and explain the massive amounts of presents in the background that I'm able to see, and those listening have no idea what's going on.
Oh, yeah. So I am sitting in my guest room covered. I have to take a picture.
Yeah,
I'm going to take a picture and then put it on the Instagram, Hilarious Humanitarian. So today is the last day of the fundraiser. As some of you know, some of you might not know, I live in Ventura. We were evacuated because of the Thomas fire. Thankfully, our house was okay. I'm giving back to the community. I just want to bring like some shred of normalcy during the holidays, especially because everybody that lost their home also lost all their holiday decorations, and there's kids and everything. So the Hilarious Humanitarian community is badass. Like in 7 days, we've almost raised $7,000.
So awesome.
Yeah. So 100% of the donations have gone to everything you see behind me. I don't know. Can you see? Like,
it's mountains upon mountains of gifts. And I think it's, I know that lots of people are coming together, and Red Cross does all this stuff for like, the necessities, but really, like you said, just a shred of normalcy at Christmas.
It took me a while. We talked about this on episode 7. Like, I was taking a few days, like wrapping my head around just the devastation out here and the destruction that the fire caused. And I'm like, I don't know what I want to do yet in terms of fundraising. And then I just realized so many people have done such an amazing job collecting clothes, basic necessities, food, you name it, diapers, animal food, crates for animals. And so I just thought, you know what? It's during the holidays. I want to just buy presents and give people stockings and just take them out of the moment for a minute. Just remember what the holidays are about: showering each other with love. At least that's where I am in my head.
And it brought you today to going to work in your pajamas.
The level of exhaustion. I really am a glutton for punishment. The second the words "I am so exhausted" come out of my mouth is like the second I decide to pick up yet another responsibility or like thing. Do you do that? Like I am insane. I'm convinced.
So my therapist today goes, Frances, you ever think you do too much?
Yeah.
I was like, I don't know what you're talking about. But anyway, just to kind of give you a peek into my world, I'm talking to Deanna right now with a robe on because it's cold in my house, because we're doing we're doing like all the floors in the house. Mm-hmm. The house is turned upside down. But I did wear my very professional hanging with my Snowbies shirt today.
I like it.
Which went over really well with a new couple that I met for the first time in couples therapy. But I was like,
this is me.
This is
me. Welcome to my office. Yeah. So anyhow, I am so exhausted that I was like, you know what? I'm just showing up to work. I hope everyone's just proud of me for doing that. And I have my pajama dress on, and I threw on a clean top. I was doing the layering look, and I just threw on some pants, and I was like, yeah, this is a thing. This is what we do.
You know what? You're like one of those obnoxiously cute women that pulls it off. Me, it would be like, what is she doing?
I don't know if I'd go that far, but thank you, Frances. I love you too.
Well, one of the things that I've been covering a lot, and you and I were talking about this off the air lately, it seems as though there is a rampant amount of shame. And I don't know if it comes up with the holidays or the changing in the weather or whatnot, but you and I have been talking about this, and there's some really interesting stuff floating around out there, and having the conversations in sessions. We decided that would probably be a really solid next podcast for us. So I asked someone today, I'm like, do you know what the difference between shame and guilt is? And they're like, well, no, it's the same thing.
Yeah. I think when we were talking about doing this topic, I really had to like brush up myself, because I'm like, I know there's a difference, but we use it so interchangeably. Like I know I do that personally, is all I'm really trying to say here. And I really had to go, what is the difference? Because I know there is one, and it's pretty massive. They're very, very different.
It is. So why don't we start with just some basic, I guess, vocabulary, because this is going to be important, I think, for people listening as they're trying to wrestle through, especially with the holidays. They might feel guilty for not going and doing something, but are they feeling ashamed for not doing it, i.e. like spending time with family, right?
Right. So in doing a little bit of research, you love Dr. Brown, Brene Brown,
I
right?
love her. Oh, if she started a commune tomorrow, I would sign up today.
Oh, I'm quitting everything. My kid's never going to normal school ever again. I'm dragging my kid, my whole family there. So
Yes.
if you're listening, Dr. Brown, we are in.
Yeah.
She's like, oh my God, these people are weird.
We'll be your lemmings. Go ahead. We're totally
Yeah.
fangirling out. So Dr. Brene Brown, a lot of people know her from TED Talks. She has an amazing TED Talk that took off on vulnerability, but she's actually a licensed clinical social worker who does a lot of research, which usually,
Whoop, whoop.
yeah,
Sorry.
yeah, she is one of your people. She's
Yep.
one of your people. She's not one of my people in that she is a researcher. She's very driven by numbers, and I'm not. Math is not my thing.
Yeah.
But she has a great TED Talk on vulnerability, and we kind of got the inspiration here. So what is the difference? Shame and
Right.
guilt.
So shame is focusing on the self, whereas guilt is focused more on behavior. For example, shame would say something like, I am bad, whereas guilt says, I did something bad. And Dr. Brene Brown actually talks about how the ways that they're so incredibly opposite of one another is that shame has been found to have like a very strong correlation with like addiction and violence, bullying, depression, aggression, eating disorders, whereas guilt, it's a normal response to feeling like we've done something that is the opposite of like who our character is, who we want to be. You know, it's like having the acknowledgement of, I love Frances. She's a very good friend of mine. And I would feel guilty if I didn't like show up to her birthday party. You know, like I wanted to take a nap instead. You know, like
I
I
would
would.
totally understand because I love her.
Right. So maybe that's not the best example.
But it's a good one. Like when you let down an expectation.
Right. So it's like I feel guilty because who I want to be is a good friend and show up to my friends' birthday parties and yada, yada, yada. Whereas shame would be like, I'm an awful human being and just feel we'd be experiencing it completely differently than if it
It would
just
turn into a spiral. So maybe you
Right.
missed the birthday party, but then from there you're like, oh my gosh, I'm a horrible friend and I'm a horrible mother and I'm just horrible at everything. And have you ever done that where you've just found yourself kind of spiraling into this shame spiral?
When I was thinking about the topic, I was really taking a moment to think like, when was the last time I really felt true shame? Which is interesting to think about anyway. But the more I was thinking about it, I was like, you know what? I felt shame after I had my daughter because I feel like there's so many expectations of new moms and new parents. God, we hear this, oh my God, when you have a baby, it's so amazing and it's so awesome and it's lovely and oh, it's a cute little baby and like everything's wonderful. Nobody prepares you for like the reality of it's terrifying. At least I can only speak for myself. Like I felt terrified. I was really highly anxious. I bonded with her pretty quickly, but it was just such a major transition. And I started to feel shame, like, what the fuck is wrong with me? Why am I not feeling just happy all this, like every second, you know, like I'm
oh my God, she's so amazing all the time.
yeah. Like people would be like, oh my God, how's the baby? How are things? And I'm like, I'm fucking terrified. I need my mommy. Like seriously. And I started to feel like I'm a failure. Like this is what it feels like to just not be good enough. Did you go through any of that or like
I did. And in getting ready to answer your question, Deanna, it's kind of funny because I'm at home. My kids are busy watching Elf because it's, you know, a couple days before Christmas. And I was like, are they going to hear this? Because I don't want to feel guilty for what I'm about to say. So I didn't really bond with my kids until they were older. And I realize now because of situations I was in work related wise, I think kind of tapped out with going to grad school and also having 2 kids within 21 months and doing the things I thought I was supposed to be doing. Like I never really bonded with them. And so then I didn't get it. Like I didn't have that, oh my God, my kids are so amazing feeling. I was just kind of like going through the motions. And I don't know if it was postpartum depression. I mean, I was predisposed to depression anyways and on medication. So I felt really ashamed. Like even telling that, like I feel like pieces and flavors of shame, but I've had to kind of pull myself out of that to realize there were a lot of things that were going into it. Because like real talk, like I didn't love him the way I should have loved him. I didn't know how. And so, yeah, I felt full of shame over that once I realized it. It was in the moment when I realized, holy shit, this isn't how it's supposed to be, that I went just full, and it was ugly.
Did you have any support at that time, or like anybody that you could reach out to? The reason why I'm asking is because in doing more like looking up Dr. Brene Brown and like listening to her TED talk, she talks about like the petri dish. Did you hear about that? Like,
yeah,
like shame. If you put shame in a petri dish, in order for it to grow, you need 3 things: secrecy, silence, and judgment. But in order for shame to not be able to survive, if you put it in the petri dish, you add empathy to that petri dish, and shame just cannot survive. So essentially it's, if you even have just one person in your life that hears your story and is just non-judgmental and just accepts you for what's going on and who you are, and it's kind of like the whole Me Too,
right?
The shame tends to like dissipate pretty quick. And I won't say any names because I didn't get permission before this episode. I have a few friends who had babies a couple weeks after me or before me, and I was lucky in that we were all so exhausted and I would have rather chewed on glass than made a phone call, especially during the first like 5 months of my daughter's life. Like I was just so exhausted, but I did have the ability to like text message them. So I would reach out to them and they'd reach out to me, and I'm like, am I fucking crazy? Do you feel this way? Or I don't know, like even something as small as like going on Instagram and seeing all these people with new babies with like fantastic clothes and just like picture perfect these images and whatnot. Like till this day, you won't find a picture of my daughter on social media with like matching socks. Like I don't even have fucking time. Like it's my thing. Her shit's inside out. So is mine. Listen to episode 7. I was wearing inside out pants. I'll blame it on the fire, but truly that's my style. And I'm just like, it's exhausting trying to like live up to all these friggin' expectations that society puts on us. And so even though I think I've done a pretty good job of like bucking the system my whole life, being a little bit rebellious, like this is me, and if you don't like it, then whatever, I'm a good person and I'm just doing my thing. Like when I became a mom, it was really hard to shake that expectation of society, what family's putting on you, people asking all these opinions. And it's just like, Jesus, it was really tough.
I feel you on that because, first of all, everything on social media, if you're looking, no one posts a bad picture of themselves on social media. It's like you always get the good ones. I'm not putting when my kids are being an absolute just mess on social media. For instance, though, you know what? It did kind of creep out on me today. I did a Facebook Live from the radio station where I work, and I was giving my friend his present. And I have both kids in the studio because they're with me at work because they're out of school. And the little one's just on one. He's excited, being crazy. I'm off the air, but on Facebook Live going, if you don't knock it off right now, Christmas isn't happening.
That's that's life.
And I felt, and then I felt like this amount, like this sense of, oh my God, what are people thinking? What are they thinking? And then somebody messaged, chaos, stuff spilling, excited kids, sounds just like Christmas morning. And I was like, okay, I feel better. So in that moment of empathy, I felt better in that example. Now, when I was younger and I just had kids, I don't know if it's because I just cut myself off and thought showing that I needed something showed I was weak. I don't know what it was, but to answer your question, it took a while to find that support. I got lots of judgment, and I have a very supportive, strong network of people now. But I think in those times, it was a little bit of a struggle. Not a little, it was a struggle. And I remember, and this is something I take with me as I'm a therapist. I had a therapist who I was seeing, and she helped me initially realize when I was in my early 20s that I had depression, that I was battling an eating disorder and stuff. And I saw her for a while, and I took a break, and I went back when I was pregnant, and I was, I'm applying for grad school, and she looked at me and she goes, don't you think you should wait on that until after you raise your children?
What?
And I was like, in that moment, this bitch, like,
Right.
we're done.
We're done.
Our
therapeutic
done.
relationship is over.
Right. And she helped me. And this is a good point, I think, to bring up in terms of therapy and therapists and people looking. Not all therapists are the right fit all the time.
Oh,
So
hell no.
She was great. She was nurturing in the ways I needed when I first got into treatment. But there was a very different approach to life that came out blaringly once I decided I was going to go back to grad school. And so we kindly parted ways.
And isn't that true? That's like, so that's a good example of just like life in general. Like, right. I mean, of course, I'm straying off the topic once again.
No.
Welcome to the Hilarious Humanitarian Podcast. But that's what happens with like friends.
Absolutely.
You know? Like some friends we keep forever, and no matter what transition we are in our life or what we're going through, it's just, it flows and they're able to like bend and groove, and we're able to do the same for them. And then in some friends, I mean, look at people who are trying to get sober, you know, like they're going to have friends who are totally supportive, and some friends who are doing everything in their power to make it so that person doesn't get sober, just wants, misery loves company, or just wanting to drag them back in. Or people that want to lose weight. You know, you've got friends who are like knowing you want to lose weight, but offering you brownies and cookies and candy every day at work. And it's like, dude, you know what I mean? So, but back to the topic at hand.
Actually, I have one more thing I want to say.
Yeah.
You can do your thing and then I'll do my thing, and it's off the topic about the friends thing. Got it? Go.
No, we can do it right now. Just keep going.
Somebody told me once, you have friends for a reason, a season, or a lifetime.
Oh, I like that.
And yes. And you know what the crazy thing is? She was for a season. This person that gave me this really, I mean, I've taken that with me everywhere. Now through that connection, I have made other connections that have been on deeper, different levels. But people come into your life for a reason, a season, or a lifetime. And sometimes those reasons are to teach you some real hard lessons.
Yeah.
So I keep that in mind with the good relationships and also with the really shitty ones. Okay, maybe the lesson is don't ever do that again.
Right. Exactly. That would be a good future topic for us to talk about, is friendships. How painful. Breakups are difficult. Breaking up with a friend, though, can also be really difficult. It could also be very liberating.
Oh, sometimes, yeah.
Yeah. But going back
to the shame thing.
Yeah, back to the topic. What they also like, I hate saying like the research shows.
Hey, but do it because it makes us sound smart.
Okay. I wish. Oh, should that be in the show or not?
Yeah, no, that's staying. That's staying.
So vulnerability, it's so strange. Okay, here's what's up. When I was watching the TED Talks of Dr. Brown, she asked the audience, how many do you think vulnerability and weakness are like synonymous? Just raise your hand. And you can check it out. Like just Google TED Talks and Dr. Brene Brown. And the majority of the audience raised their hand. And then the second question she asked is like, how many of you throughout this week of like, I guess it was a TED Talk series, felt that when you saw people on the stage doing, you know, their talk, were showing great courage? And like the entire audience raised their hand. And it's like, see how conflicting that is, because the person that was doing their talk on the stage is highly vulnerable. So the audience was interpreting the person being on the stage as highly courageous for showing vulnerability.
Well, and that's where you connect to people.
Right. And so she goes on to talk about how so often we try to work our way around vulnerability, or feeling vulnerable, or feeling like we're going to be perceived as weak, and trying to like set up all these crazy expectations of ourselves. Like, oh, I'm not ready to launch into this hobby or this career. I mean, look at, like, I talked about it on our first episode or second episode of this podcast. Like, I was terrified of being vulnerable, just terrified, like, of the exposure, of what it's going to bring to us. And what ended up happening is what we've gotten like hundreds of messages so far of people being like, oh my God, we love your podcast show because it's so real. It's so down to earth. I feel like I'm in the room with like two of my girlfriends. You women are relatable. People respect that they want others. How am I trying to say this?
I think we want connection, right? We want
Yeah.
realness. We want authenticity.
Authenticity. People want to see you. They want to be seen, but everybody's like shaking in the corner, afraid of what's going to happen if they show their true colors, which is so counterintuitive because that's what everybody in the room shaking in their boots, all of us want. That is human connectedness. Sure, there's always that one sociopath, but let's all run away from him or her because that person sucks. You suck. If you're a sociopath, don't listen to our show.
No offense. We don't want you. Like, really go away.
Bye-bye. And so Dr. Brown talks about like stepping into the arena, having the courage to step into the arena and just like going for it. And people in the audience that are watching the person step into the arena and just handle it and just like go full charge into like whatever they want to pursue, the audience isn't expecting perfection. The audience is actually just rooting for the person in the arena, and they're just super stoked that that person's actually giving a shit and trying, and I think that we tend to lose that like perspective. We think that everybody is just expecting this perfect performance when that's not the case. Like, how many times, I can't tell you how many times, like, especially in grad school, I would be listening to a lecture and the presenter is just like super well-spoken and articulate and just insanely intelligent. And I have a lot of respect for those people, but I don't feel connected to them. I feel a bit insecure or like inferior, like, oh, there's just no way I would ever be this person's friend. They would be like, stop stuttering on your words and figure out what you're trying to say, Deanna, But then like I've also met professors or people that lecture and have a wonderful message and are really intelligent, but the way they present their information is just super duper real. And I don't want to say flawed, but it's just not polished in that like everything is just super succinct and perfect. It's not in this like little pretty package. And I just feel like most human beings relate to somebody who's just like, hey, they show up, they do their best, and they're real, and they have a real message, but they're not trying to present it in this like perfect, structured way.
It's impossible to do that. But we still try. For whatever reason, we're still trying. And I think one of the ways to combat that, two things. One, you're talking about in the arena. I use this analogy or metaphor. See, I say that because I don't know which one's right. But I used this thingy earlier today where
I like thingy.
Where I was trying to explain that same idea, the metaphor, analogy, whatever, of the face down in the arena to somebody. And I asked him, do you watch sports of some type? And he watches like MMA. And I said, those people who are like critiquing the guys fighting in the ring and like, they've never, ever even done a workout. Right? Or armchair quarterbacks, for instance. I feel like we've gotten into this culture where everybody thinks because they have a voice that they have the right to criticize. And sorry, not sorry, check yourself and shut the fuck up sometimes. Yeah. Because I think that type of attitude perpetuates, and like the petri dish, it spreads. So if you're going to be hypercritical of everything, you're perpetuating that. So you make the people around you a little less comfortable with actually showing some vulnerability. And I think as a society, we've kind of done that. We've all become very, very good critics and can point out all the flaws, but never the strengths. And in therapy, one of the approaches is like strength-based. They use this in schools too. A kid might be a total screw up in a lot of ways, but find the strengths, even if it's a tiny one, like they're just showing up for school.
Oh, for sure. In fact, as a LCSW, licensed clinical social worker, like I must have heard strengths-based 1,000 times in grad school. And I'm so happy I did. It completely guides the way I speak to people, how I treat people. Like even when I'm doing assessments in the psych hospital, I'll have somebody come in who's acutely in mental health crisis. They might have attempted suicide. They are seriously considering suicide. A lot is going on with them. They are in crisis mode. They've been put on a 5150. I'm doing a full assessment with them. asking them all sorts of questions, I always either end my assessment with this question or at least highlight this question, which is, I'm bringing up a lot. I'm asking what's been going on. And then I'll say, well, what has worked for you in the past? Or what are you interested in? Or what puts a smile on your face? It could literally be anything. It could be music. Were you into playing the piano in the past? Or I've had people that are just like, I actually was a really, really good swimmer years and years ago, but it's just something that they've like lost touch with because of either addiction or maybe just the time isn't there, like the timing isn't there. They don't have the opportunity to go swimming or training anymore. But it's always just finding that little glimmer of hope and reminding people that we all have strengths and remembering that about us. We can tap back into it. And we actually use that. I'm sure you do this too with people that are like seeking sobriety or just anything in general, not even sobriety, just if you're depressed. What are you going to use when you're feeling really, really bad or, obviously reaching out to your supports and whatnot. But if you're into music therapy, pick up your guitar. Somewhere down the line, maybe you can teach people how to play guitar, whatever it is. We want to remember what people's strengths are and not just focus on the negative all the time. And I like how you brought up the fact that in this day and age, everyone's just so highly opinionated and critical about each other. It's fucking crazy. Like, it's maddening. I get so frustrated. In fact, I always have this approach with people where I make it a point to when I meet somebody new, or maybe it's not new. It could be my friend's husband, for God's sakes. And we're talking and he could be talking about how much he loves model cars, and not like hot rod cars, like
little model cars,
like little tiny model cars where he like drives his wife nuts because he's like, painting the little tires in the garage. But I can see that he loves that hobby. And even though I would be bored, I would be so bored, I would be in tears. Okay. I can recognize that my hobbies might bore the shit out of him, but I would still like it if I were talking about it, that he would at least also give me like a moment to talk about what interests me. So I guess what I'm trying to say here is like my approach with people is always to not judge them, not critique things, not give my ignorant opinion on model car building. I don't know anything about it. So it's like, it doesn't take much for me to be like, oh, tell me about that model car you've been working on. Like, what is that community like? It's just about getting to know people and their hobbies, and like how it seems silly, but it's not. Like, you're seeing people, you're hearing people, you're listening to them instead of like, you're a dork, or like you're fucking stupid. Like, that's so nerdy of you, like you build cars, you're 40. Pick up a gun and go hunting. I don't know. You know what I mean, though?
I do. And you know what? This is what makes me laugh is you and I swear, it's funny that we met because I Instagram stalked you. Because I do the same thing. I love to find the thing that lights people up. And lately, some of my favorites have been a guy I know that's really into vaping, and he makes coils. Ask me how many times I've vaped.
How many?
Zero.
Okay.
But he'll tell me all about the recipes and stuff, and you watch him light up. I've also learned all about fishing steelhead in Oregon, because this particular guy I know, he does a lot of nutrition stuff. And I don't know, I mentioned something about my boyfriend likes to fish, and he lit up. I mean, I got to come back and talk like I knew something about fishing to my boyfriend, who was like, really? That's a thing?
Right.
And you just look for them to light up. And it's amazing because you know what? That dynamic changed immediately. The next time I saw that guy, it was like, hey, what's going on? We didn't talk about fishing, but it was like a connection.
Yeah, there's like a rapport that's been built. Like I remember years ago I met this dude, and he told me that he was into anime, and the way he said it, you could tell it took a lot for him to come out and say it. He had this like deep, dark secret. And he was surprised at my reaction because I was just so neutral about it. Like, oh, that's cool. Like, what do you like about it? I don't really know much about it. And he thanked me for not making him feel like a weirdo.
So there's the shame piece. Oh my God, we just came full circle.
Here we are.
You were the empathy in the petri dish that was his petri dish full of shame about anime.
I mean, as long as it's not like weird porno anime. No.
You know what? Some of those chicks are kind of hot.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, okay. Body goals. Okay, wait, no, those are like really bad expectations for body image.
Let's pull those back. But you know, we could never be a cartoon character, so it's fine.
That's true. That is true. Right. So there you go, full circle. I do make sense sometimes.
I kind of am really impressed about how we pulled that off, actually.
That happens once a year. So come back next December. I hope you stick around. Listen, guys, don't be a dick. Yes.
That is our Christmas message to you. So the takeaway here is, I think, guilt is good in some cases, in that it keeps us in line with our morals and values. Now, if you're feeling guilty about something because it's been drilled into your head and maybe those morals and values are out of line with who you are as a person, then you have to reevaluate that, right? Mm-hmm. What's popping into my head is that I've dealt with a lot of people personally and professionally who have a lot of guilt wrapped up maybe in sexual orientation because they've been raised a certain way. You got to sort through that stuff on your, kind of do your work. But guilt can be something that guides us in directions that are more positive. Shame, on the other hand, is corrosive. And much like the petri dish, can fuck a whole lot of stuff up.
Right. Shame is the voice in your head that says, you're not good enough. This was your fault. You're nothing. You're pathetic. You're disgusting. You're ugly. Shame is a shithead. And
we should make shirts.
Shame is a shithead. I'll totally wear that. Okay, guys, if you want a shame is a shithead shirt, I am not kidding. Hilarious Humanitarian Instagram. You go on there and just hashtag shame is a shithead.
That's going to be the name of the first book. You heard it here first.
Okay. Well, I'm not joking.
I know you're not. Neither am I.
I'm going to be getting off the mic in like 10 minutes and be Googling shame is a shithead t-shirts. How do we move forward?
Trademark that stuff fast.
But just as Frances was saying, like, if you're truly feeling shame, it's going to hold you back. And I think Frances would agree, like, most likely the shame that you're feeling about something was like most likely like inflicted upon you, and you've just now internalized that experience or that trauma. It's not your fault. You do not deserve a life where you're walking around feeling shame. You can feel better. You can get better. It's just, you will have to put in the work, whether that's through therapy or other modalities, but you can get better. Whereas, just as Frances was saying, like, guilt is just, I did something bad that really doesn't align with who I am. I feel crappy, and then I'm going to do everything in my power to not do that again. Guilt is okay. Guilt is a good, it's okay, because it's like, oh, I did something bad. I don't like the way that felt, because it's not who I am. So I'm going to try really, really hard to not do that again.
Okay, so guilt is not a shithead.
Guilt is not a shithead. What is guilt?
Guilt, okay. I would say, is the parent that means well, but is sometimes messed up.
That would be a really long t-shirt. Like that would be like a t-shirt dress, because a lot of words. I'll buy that though.
Like your pajama shirt you have on.
Pajama tunic shirt.
Okay, so I think since we have spent the last 40 minutes or so discussing the shame and the guilt, I think that there's probably more to talk about this come in future podcasts, but I think I'm done. And I'm not going to feel guilty about it either.
Yeah.
Or ashamed.
We're both feeling a little bit guilty that we're not spending time with our families. So on that note, shame is a shithead. We love you all very much. We wish you all a happy, safe, peaceful holiday going into the new year. Be good to each other. Be good to yourself. Be good to the world. Be good to your pets. Give them a little hug and a kiss. And we'll see you guys next week.
And make sure to subscribe and give us 5-star ratings for Christmas.
For Christmas and for Hanukkah.